What's up, guys? So this sort of first half of the year, there's a thing going on, and you may be able to tell both from the background and the title. The hashtag, I think it is, going around called hashtags aren't called anything; they simply are. Road to Infinity. Massive mental blank for a moment there. I apologise. Yes, Road to Infinity. And so the first step of that is, of course, the original Iron Man. I found this picture online and I thought it was so cool. I set it as my screensaver for this video. So I'm going to go into a few Easter eggs and references and stuff. Before I do, I'm just going to sort of show you guys some things that I have that are Iron Man. Obviously I have this little guy over here demonstrating the classic Iron Man pose. This is my Blu-ray case. It's the front and the back, showing him as both Tony Stark and Iron Man, which is kind of cool. On the inside, it's just got this nice gradient, which you'll notice is the colours from the front. And then there's this little blurb on the inside as well, which basically tells you what the film's about. Because I got it with the other Phase 1 films in the box set that they come with, I got a whole heap of Tony Stark things in a very official looking shield folder, complete with coffee cup stain. And among those things were some designs which you can see sort of fit together, and there's 4 of them in total, which when you put them together obviously make the Iron Man suit. I haven't got them all lined up properly there, but it does actually work. And I've also got, I was collecting a lot of things a while back, Marvel related. One of them was this cool Iron Man comic book. It's got all of these issues inside it, and I have read all of these. So I'm ready to get into some Easter eggs and stuff. So without further ado, let's get into it. Also, just quickly, guys, before I get into the video, I will reveal at the end how many Easter eggs and references I have found in this film at the end, and we'll see who is keeping count. So leave that in the comments below, how many Easter eggs, and also if I've missed any. I don't think I have, but if I have, please leave them in the comments below, because I would love to be able to find all of the Easter eggs and references in this, the first of the MCU. So as you can see, the Stark Industries logo is very similar to the Lockheed Martin logo, and they're a company who develop aerospace technologies and defense stuff, which is exactly the same thing as what Stark Industries makes in the film. So as you can see here, behind these men is the 10 Rings symbol. The 10 Rings is obviously a reference to the Mandarin, who is the arch rival of Iron Man.
Are your loyal customers, sir? They call themselves the 10 Rings.
Alright, so the third reference is sort of one that scrapes the bottom of the barrel a little bit, but you can't really see it really well, but he's doing the same sort of stance as my little friend over here is doing. He's just not Iron Man yet. I found this interesting because it sort of sets up that that's just a stance that he does, and that he's just incorporated it once he's put the armor on, and that therefore he always was Iron Man, which makes the statement at the end of the movie all that more true. I just found that kind of interesting. Scraps the bottom of the barrel a bit, but it's still sort of a reference, I guess, foreshadowing, whatever you want to call it. In this same scene, which I will play behind me, Rhodey's character says something very interesting, which is also another foreshadowing thing.
And protecting America and her interests around the globe.
As liaison to Stark Industries, I've had the unique privilege of serving with the real Patriot.
So in case you didn't hear that, he says, as liaison to Stark Industries, I've had the real privilege of working with a real patriot, which obviously Rhodey's character ends up becoming Iron Patriot in Iron Man 3. So another little bit of foreshadowing there, which I just thought was really cool. Would have been just a reference to another version of the suit. And yeah. Also the theme, the music in this scene, in the casino, which is the bit after this, in the bedroom when he gets back with the reporter, and Rhodey's phone, his ringtone, are all the 1966 rather, cartoons theme song in various forms. The reporter herself is the source of a couple of Easter eggs and references and stuff in this movie. The first one, of course, is that her name is Christine Everhart, which in the comics, she works for the Daily Bugle, which is where Spider-Man works from. Obviously, knowing what we know now, that's very interesting. But it would have just been a random reporter that they plucked from Marvel's character load. In the movie, she works for Vanity Fair because obviously at the time, the Daily Bugle was sort of owned by Sony as far as movie rights were concerned. So yeah, it's kind of cool. So in this scene here, we get told that the AI running the house is Jarvis, which is an obvious reference to Edwin Jarvis from the comics. He exists in the MCU, he just doesn't make an appearance in any of the films. He is in both seasons of Agent Carter, which is set in the 50s and 60s, I believe. Probably more likely the 40s and 50s, but anyway, he does exist in the MCU, is what I'm trying to say. So that makes this version of Jarvis based on the original Butler, which is sort of cool. But at the time, this would have just been a reference to the Butler. So the hot rod that Tony's working on in this little scene here before he's sent off to the weapons presentation in Afghanistan is actually the director and the actor for Happy Hogan's, Jon Favreau, is actually his hot rod that they're working on. So it helps sort of, I don't know, it's a cool little thing to know, I guess. It's not really a reference to the character himself, but the hot rod is important later on because it's how he gets the red colouring on his suit.
When I get up in the morning and I'm putting on my uniform, you know what I recognize? I see in that mirror every person that's got this uniform got my belt.
So the music in this scene is a song by rapper Ghostface Killah, who actually has a cameo, which I'll bring up in a second. But this song is called Slept on Tony, in which Ghostface Killah refers to himself as Tony Stark's, and another one of his aliases that he likes to use sometimes is Iron Man. There's actually an album of his called Iron Man. So it's just sort of cool that they've used his song, and that he had a cameo as well, which I will bring up now. He's in a deleted scene, so he's not actually in the final cut. So I'll just go get his deleted scene for you, and you can sort of see what he would have been in.
Yep.
So Ghostface Killah is the guy wearing the cap just here, and he's a tycoon in Dubai. That they obviously had some sort of a history there, and then Tony ends up walking away with the two girls that he was talking to before.
From a small town called Gomera. It's actually an express.
So Goldmira, which is the town that he says Yinsen says he's from, is from the comic books, but it was also a retcon that they made to try and make the comics a little bit more modern and relevant. Originally he was from a place called Madripoor, and I also found one other place that he said he was from was a country called Timbet-Paul. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yeah, the Goldmira, Afghanistan, which is the one they've used here in the movie, was actually a retcon from the original. So in a real blink and you miss it moment, there is actually a reference to what this entire scene is about if you have followed Robert Downey Jr., and it's right there. You can't see it on the screen because of the light, and I don't exactly know how to turn the brightness on my TV down. But if you do have a copy of the movie at home, it's such a small thing, but on the bag that he's reaching into, it has the Burger King logo, which could just seem like a random product placement. But before he got signed to do this movie, Robert Downey Jr. Had a very bad drug habit, and it was Burger King that made him stop, because I read this, I think it was IMDb, where it said that he tasted a burger from Burger King that was so disgusting it made him rethink his life, and then he decided to just throw all the drugs that he had in his car at the time in the ocean, which is effectively what Tony's doing in this scene here with the press conference, where he's deciding to throw all of the weapons development stuff out the window and not have anything to do with it. So it's a really cool parallel between, you know, like it's art imitating life, which is really cool reference to the fact that it's Robert Downey Jr. playing it. This would just be a random product placement if it wasn't for Robert Downey Jr. So if you watch the credits and actually read who's playing who, you'll find out that Farhan Tahir, who is the man on the screen in front of you right now, the character's name that he has is actually Razor, who is the cyborg character from the comics that I've also got in this little collage in front of you. What's interesting to note here is that there is no direct relation between Razor and Tony Stark, the only correlation being that they are both armored superheroes.
How'd it go? Not that bad, huh?
Just because I brought pizza back from New York doesn't mean it's bad.
Sure doesn't.
So the music here is very interesting to note, because it's composed by a man named Antonio Salieri, who, if you believe the rumors, killed Mozart, or attempted to kill Mozart or something like that, which sets the paradigm between Obadiah Stane and Tony Stark really well, because obviously later on Stane will don the Ironmonger suit and try to kill Tony. The other part of what makes this interesting is that Antonio Salieri and Mozart would actually work together on things like Stane and Stark are in the movie up until the point. So it's sort of the perfect piece to put in. Plus it also demonstrates Jeff Bridges' piano skills, which, why wouldn't you want to see that? Alright, so I've paused this scene and I'm going to talk before it because you need to be listening very carefully to find this little reference, which is kind of cool because it continues in a way in other appearances from Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark. and that is with the heads-up display. When it locks onto the little boy and sort of expands out, very briefly within the other sound effects, you can hear the laser gun from Space Invaders. So I will play this for you so you can hear that for yourself. So if you heard it just then, it sort of expands out, you hear the little laser cannon fire, which is kind of a cool little reference that they put in there. The future of this obviously is that in the Avengers they fight some Space Invaders, and they also reference that again in that with Gallagher. But obviously I'll add that into my Avengers one in a couple of weeks' time. The next reference is this drawing from Adi Granov, who is one of the comic artists, and it appears in this scene when he's testing the Mark II, and it's just here on a poster in the street. It's only very brief, and it's sort of easily missed. The character depicted is Fin Fang Foom, and he is a dragon-esque alien creature known as a Makluan. And that's important because the rings of power that Mandarin has are Makluan power rings. So not only is this a reference to a character in the picture, but it also has implications of the Mandarin, again, slight reference to him as well. So it's highly unlikely that this reference actually meant anything about for the future of the MCU. But it's kind of interesting to note the Iron Man, his character's history in the comics, with this comment made by Jarvis.
Perhaps if you intend to visit other planets, we should improve the exosystems connected.
So he references visiting other planets. Now in the comics, I'm not sure if this was before or whatever, I do have to check my facts on this particular one. But in the comics, at one point, Iron Man was part of the Guardians of the Galaxy with an outer space version of the Iron Man suit. So it's possible that this was a Guardians of the Galaxy reference, which only die-hard fans would know about at the time of the movie's release in 2008. It is possible that that was the case, but I'm not certain on it. Another possible reference that I'd have to check my facts on is that as the camera pans up to reveal the TV screen on his wall, the reporter says that they're at the Disney Concert Hall. Now, I'm not entirely certain when it was that Disney bought Marvel, that currently own Marvel. This film was financed by Marvel themselves, but I don't know if they were in talks to be bought out. I do know that there were times they had to sell characters because Marvel Comics was going bankrupt, and that's why they sold their characters to everyone else. So it is possible that this was a reference to a deal that may have been in the talks at the time, or it's simply just that they found a location and it just happens to be owned by Disney, who later bought them out. I'm not entirely sure, but looking back now, I'm sort of seeing it as maybe a bit of a reference. So the gold rendering here in this same scene as the last two references is actually a throwback to the Golden Avenger. The Golden Avenger, rather. I don't know what just happened with my voice there. But it's a throwback to that when the suit was all gold in the comics. It's in the comic book here, I believe, at one point, and I found it really kind of ridiculous because it has like a antenna on it as well, which is kind of weird, and obviously later on it gets integrated into one of the other systems. But yeah, it is a throwback to the Golden Avenger, when the suit was all gold, before he got any red on him. So that's interesting to note. So this is Stan Lee's first appearance in the MCU, where he played Hugh Hefner. In the credits it says that he's playing himself. So what's likely here is that because he's simply talking to a bunch of beautiful young women, Tony's just mistaken him for Hugh Hefner, who, if you don't know, is the guy who set up Playboy magazine. And obviously Tony himself is a bit of a playboy, so that could be also a bit of a reference, as well as a Stan Lee cameo. So it's a double whammy here. In the scene where he's in the bar, Christine again appears, and this is her second reference. As you can see from the pictures in front of you that are scrolling, they have two Stephen King books, one of which is called Christine and one is called Carrie. They're both really well known. They've both had movies made about them, and in this scene Tony freaks out when he's approached by her and calls her Carrie in an attempt to try and guess her name. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be intentional as a Stephen King reference, or if it's simply just a way of showing that Tony forgets the names of all of the girls that he sleeps with. But it is still kind of cool to note that the names that they have sort of picked for this character are both Stephen King books. So in this scene here where Tony's fighting the F2 fighter jets, it's interesting to note that their call signs are Whiplash 1 and Whiplash 2. The reason this is interesting to note is because obviously in Iron Man 2, Whiplash is the main villain, and so this may have been a bit of foreshadowing for villains to come, considering that it's now very well known that Marvel likes to plan multiple years in advance or ahead. You got both of them caught up trying to come out at the same time then. But yeah, it could be that they were planning Whiplash for one of the other films, you know, to come in a future installment sort of thing. But considering that this was their first time self-financing a film, it's highly unlikely that they were betting that they were going to make a sequel, or even considering a sequel at the time, and so therefore this is just a reference to the character who does eventually come into the next film. So in this brief little shot, you can see that Stain is sitting next to a chess set, and the reason this is an interesting reference is because Stain, and even I didn't know this until I was doing some research for this video, Stain in the comics creates a group of supervillains to attack Stark Industries known as the Chessmen. So everyone knows this reference is that there's Captain America's shield in the background as Pepper walks in on Tony trying to take the suit off after his fly through Afghanistan. So in this scene here where Pepper's going through Tony's computer and getting all of the information on the suit for him from Stain's server, it's interesting to note the Big Lebowski references, like the vessel that the missile is being carried on, and some of the lines in these cargo instructions down the bottom of the page reference various lines of dialogue from the movie The Big Lebowski. And the reason this is a reference is because Jeff Bridges, who plays Obadiah Stane, is the dude, the main character from The Big Lebowski. In addition to this wireframe rendition of War Machine, which appears in the comic, in the credits rather, there is a very brief reference to War Machine in the actual movie itself, where Terrence Howard's Rhodey turns and looks at the silver Mark II armor just after Tony takes off to fight Stain, and he says, "Next time, baby." In the scene where Pepper is entering Sector 16 with the SHIELD agents, apparently one of them is being played by Tom Morello, and he's one of the ones that dies. The reason this is interesting is because Tom Morello is one of the members of the band Rage Against the Machine, which is kind of ironic that he gets killed by a man in a machine. But also he helped work on the soundtrack for the film as well. So it's kind of cool that he gets his own little sort of pseudo cameo in this scene. So the next one is a Roxxon Corporation reference. This happens twice. I was very eagle-eyed to catch it on the side of a truck. The truck that they sort of slam into as they sort of tackle each other through the building. And then again, it's behind Stain when he's launching the rocket at Tony after he's kicked him into the bus. So this is another one that scrapes the bottom of the barrel a little bit, and that is the phrase underneath the big letters on the side of the bus, which says "Embracing the Future." The reason I think this could be a reference is because in the comics, Tony has said multiple times that he is a futurist. And so this could potentially be a bit of a reference to his sort of beliefs therein. The reason I have sort of decided to include this one in, even though it is really sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel, is because I was trying to find out if earlier references to the Bible, of all things, were intentional because of a religious belief that Tony may have had. And they are in the Caesar's palace. When he hands the award to the guy dressed up as Caesar, he says, "Render unto Caesar that which is his," which is a quote from the Bible. And then, of course, the missiles, which are called Jericho missiles, is also another biblical reference. So this here is the home release cover of the newspaper he's reading at the end of the film. Make note of what that picture is, because the home releases were re-edited for this picture. And the reason for that is because the original picture that they did have in the film was this one. You can see some similarities and some differences between them. The main one being that you can see that this one was taken from someone hiding in a bush. This photo was taken by an amateur photographer while they were filming the Iron Man movie, and then it was leaked online, and so the editors obviously have just taken it and or like the producers or whoever have taken it and put it in this newspaper at the end. And then, having seen that they used his image without asking him, he sued them, so they re-edited the film to have the new image in it instead of this one. I prefer this one, to be honest, because it actually is like in real life. Again, this one's life imitating art. It was someone who just took a photo while the suit was sort of there, which is how the photo would have ended up on the newspaper. If Iron Man had actually existed, it would have been someone taking a photo of him in the moment. It wouldn't have been someone making a careful, staging a photo like that one. So I actually prefer this picture. Now I'm using this picture again because this last or second to last reference is the music used in this section of the credits, and it is Black Sabbath's song Iron Man. So obviously a direct reference with the name there, and it's kind of cool because later on in the MCU, you see Tony wearing Black Sabbath shirts to sort of reflect this sort of back again.
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
So this last reference is obviously where we found that there was the idea that they were going to set up a shared universe and bring the Avengers onto the silver screen, and you know, Nick Fury comes in, so S.H.I.E.L.D., which has already been established, you know, sort of driven home a little bit more because now the famed director is there, and it's sort of, the other thing too is that the Avengers Initiative is the name of some comic books where they actually decided to bring together their own sort of group. They also did the same, like a similar thing in, I think it was the Mighty Avengers, post the Civil War comic. And so, yeah, this is just a nice little reference to those sort of comics, but also it sets up the rest of the MCU, which without this one line, we wouldn't be having this video right now. And that line was 10 years ago, so it's kind of cool to see, you know, how far we've come, sort of thing. So yeah, with that, guys, that is all of my references and whatnot, including the ones that scrape the bottom of the barrel, and the maybe biblical references. In total, I had counted 33 references in just the first film. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, and also leave other references that I may have missed as well. I know this video was a lot longer than I normally would make, but considering that it's something that I'm passionate about, and I'm going to be doing weekly videos, I thought, why not? And so we now have this lovely little video with every reference and Easter egg that I have been able to find, and that and not just by watching the movie, but by doing research and all the rest. I have compiled this sort of definitive list as far as I can tell. So yeah, until next time, guys, keep raising hell.